I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is the Gary Planning Committee. We're meeting Tuesday, September 8th. This meeting was originally supposed to start at 7 p.m., so we are running way behind. Now 8:43, we're getting started. We have 3 ordinances tonight. The first ordinance is CPO 2020-39, Amendment to the Community Benefits Agreement, sponsored by Councilman at Large Cloris Lay and Mayor Jerome Prince. The second one we have is CPO 2020-48, petitioner Tisha Smith for Sunflower Preschool LLC, property 339 Fillmore Street, Gary, Indiana. Our third one is CPO 2020-49, petitioner Ashley Carwell for Angel Daycare, property 1979 Tennessee Street, Gary, Indiana. I'm going to ask if we would take these out of order tonight and that we would start at CPO 2020-48. I do apologize to everyone that was waiting to get on. I know a couple people that wanted to present some things to us before the planning committee, but by us being so late, some people had to drop off, and I want to make sure, I don't know if we have our petitioners on at this time, but let me just, I believe we have our council members that's on. Councilman of the 1st District, William Godwin. Councilman of the 2nd District, Cozy Witherspoon. We had our Councilwoman Mary Brown was just with us, but she had to jump off. Of the 3rd District, our 4th District Council person, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell. Ty Atkins, our 4th District Councilwoman. Our 5th District Councilwoman, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell, and our Councilman of the 6th District, Dwight Williams, and our Councilman at Large, Mr. Cloris Lane. We will now start with our first ordinance, CPO 2020-48. Is Ms. Smith here?
Yes, I'm here.
How you doing, Ms. Smith? Can you tell us about your business that you're looking to start in the city of Gary?
Oh, I'm looking to open up a preschool.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Your operation?
Okay, so my mission is to bring growth to Gary, Indiana Child Development Center. I have a bachelor's in art education. I also have a CDA, which is a Child Development Associates, and I also have an associates in criminal justice. I believe that education is the key. With my education and my rich culture, I think that I will be bringing something great to Gary, Indiana that children have not even experienced. As you know, education it's a struggle in Gary, Indiana. I believe that starting young and starting in early child development will give a lot of growth and opportunity to kids in Gary, Indiana.
And the number of young people that will be in the preschool is, what's your number?
Ages 3 to 5.
3 to 5, and what's your total number that you can have?
Right now I only can have 12.
12, okay. Is there any question for any council members at this time?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Brewer. Appreciate that. Ms. Smith, I have a question. The preschool that you're opening, or that you choose to open, I noticed at 339 Fillmore. I had the pleasure of going by and just looking at the area. One of the things I noticed that there are a lot of duplexes there, and your facility is a part of a duplex. Am I correct?
Yes, we own both sides.
Okay, that was my concern. I was wondering.
Yes, we own both. Yes, we actually own the whole street. My grandma lives next. Yeah, so so the whole row. So yeah.
Okay, you own the whole thing. So I may want to look at
the whole thing. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
We normally don't get that response that you own the whole block, huh?
On the whole block, yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Okay.
Is there any other council member with any questions? And what's your hours of operation?
I've been shopping around in a lot of hours because I'm in Washington, D.C. So I guess a lot of hours in Gary, Indiana is like from 6:30-ish to 6 p.m.
Well, Councilman Brewer, I have another question. You
Yes.
just said that you're in Washington, D.C. Am I correct?
Yeah. I'm a
Oh.
teacher, so I'm teaching here in Washington, D.C. My granny passed away, left me the house.
Okay.
So I'm all over the place, and I'm here in DC right now until I
So-
get everything set up in Indiana.
When do you plan to open? What are your projected time period for opening?
January
You want to open in
2021.
January?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Brewer.
So that's the next question I have. You said you're in Washington, D.C. Are you planning on running a daycare, or you going to have someone else run a daycare?
I'm planning on moving back to Indiana. Yes.
Oh, welcome back. And I was looking at the drawings here. I'm trying to see the backyard here. Is it fenced in? Because I haven't.
Yes, it's fixed. Yes, it's fenced in.
Okay. All right. Okay. I have no other questions. If there's nothing else by any council members. Okay, we will take this matter up at our next council meeting on September the 15th. We'll be on third and final. If you can be on to the Zoom, if there's any other questions, we'd like for you to be there.
Okay.
All right, thank you. See you then.
Can I leave?
All right.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay.
Our next one is CPO 2029. Miss Ashley Cardwell, she on? Yes, I just seen her.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Hello.
Hi. Yes, can you give us an overview of about what you plan on doing with your daycare and tell us a little bit more about the operations of the business?
With my daycare now, since COVID is going on, I know a lot of people, especially parents who are working, they're not able to help their kids on the computer school, online school. So I've been working with other local daycares so they can teach me the basics of it. I'm currently in Ivy Tech. I'm enrolled in the CDA program. I have 1 year left, and then I'm done June 2021.
So this will be your first daycare ever running?
Yes, but I have been interning. I've been interning since March 2019.
What's your hours of operation that you plan?
6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Excuse me, Councilman Brewer?
Yes.
Yeah, can we ask Miss Cardwell if it's possible that we could see her face?
I'm sorry, because I was in the car. I had just got off of work. I didn't know it was starting this late. I can try to go.
And we do apologize for starting late. We had another meeting that went way over tonight, several other meetings tonight.
Okay. Hello.
Okay, now we put a face with the business.
Hi.
All right, and it's good for us and good for the people that's listening also too. So this property here, this is a property that you'll be renting?
Yes.
Because I've seen a letter going to it here. I think it was someone gave a letter here. So what are you going to? Is it year-to-year lease that you having with this property?
Yes. He's a family friend, so we, however long we're having a daycare is how long he's gonna let us rent it.
Okay. And how many kids are you planning to have at the daycare?
12.
Well, is the property fenced around?
Yes.
It was snow. I can't really tell it.
Yes, we got a fence going around the whole house, and then it's like a fence lot on the side of us. And we're also putting a fence in to like block the driveway. So like where the park is going to be for the kids in the backyard is going to all be gated.
So you haven't started making any conversation with the state or anything on this property yet, then, right? Or your plans on
No, we were waiting. We had to wait on the business permit to put it into the state. I been to my orientations for the state, and we were just waiting to submit the application for our. We needed the business permit in order to submit.
Okay.
We have everything else, the 2 other documents we needed.
Have you all reached out to any of the neighbors in that block there to let them know what your intents are?
Yes, I've talked to my neighbor. He actually has 2 houses on that block. He's renting one out, the one that's next door to us. Right now, he didn't have a problem with it. We talked to the neighbor at the end of the block, and he was fine with it.
Okay. Is there any question for any council members?
No.
That was
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any council member?
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions.
Councilman Godwin.
I'll ask them all at once, and welcome, Ashley, then you can respond to them. Is there a lease? Is there going to be a lease, or is there a lease formally on the property that is going to be drafted and signed, authorizing you to provide these kinds of services on the property? Secondly, since you don't own the property, another party does, are they going to change the property insurance to ensure that it is reflective of a business, a daycare business, as opposed to residential use? And those are my 2 questions.
Yes, we actually have talked to him about that because we talked about the taxes, and we also have filled out the paperwork, and he signed it. I sent it to the zoning. He basically signed saying it was all right for the daycare. He knows what's going on. I think we signed 2 papers for it.
Okay.
So there would be solely a daycare. You would not be living there then, correct? Just solely daycare?
No, just
Okay.
daycare, yes.
Only thing I would ask, by this being a rental of this facility here, I would ask that we would I would move to have this approved, but we would have this reviewed in a year to see what the status is of the property and the daycare.
And we also put cameras in just to make, like, if anything does happen, it's all videotape. We
Okay.
have 3 cameras put in place.
All right. Well, Ms. Caldwell, we will see you September the 8th. I'm sorry, September the 15th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. We ask if you be there for just in case there's any additional questions by any other council members. It's not here.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
I'm sorry, Councilman Lay.
How much them cameras cost you?
They were $355 at Best Buy.
Is that for all 3 or just for one?
It's for all 3 and a rotor. So it
Okay.
connects to the cloud and it saves over a period of time.
Thank you.
And we have night vision on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell.
No problem.
All right. I think I know where you're going with that, Mr. Lay. But,
I pay attention. You got votes to counter it. Yeah, it's 10 million when you guys discuss it. Yeah. Her cameras come out of Italy. Don't worry about it.
No, they may start at that point, but with the quality, it goes up tremendous. Trust me, it does.
Oh, I have cameras. I have cameras.
I do too, yes.
Yeah, some time ago. Yes. I
Okay.
have.
We will go to the next ordinance, CPO 2020-39, the amendment of the community benefits ordinance at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Lay.
I had indicated that I would not make any comments on it, but one thing I do have to comment. You guys are very loose with ordinances. As I understand, Attorney Williams drafted this amendment. Now, I done went through this at least 3-4 times with the council, and I can understand you guys know a great deal more about statutes than I do. But the way I interpret Indiana Code 36-4-9-12, very specifically, it says the head of the law department. So I understand you guys are loose with them. Eventually, like you're going to be loose with this open door.
Someone has their phone up or computer up.
So the law department must draft these things, must. They don't have an option. Even if it's illegal, they draft it and inform the council it's illegal. That's where our attorney is, Attorney Trent McCain. So again, I'm going to give you a warning that you certainly don't care much for, that if you're loose with these ordinances, like the one, for instance, open door, there, I'm going to do something about that one. It's not much I can do about this one. But pretty soon we're going to have Uncle Willie drafting ordinances. It won't matter. We're not going to follow the statute. So again, these statutes are in place because they serve a purpose. That means they're drafted correctly, and your legal counsel, the person that would argue it in court, would be the one to do it. So again, there's no justification to ignoring the statute. And if the law department, for any reason, is saying they will not draft something, then we should deal with the law department and the mayor on that. He has no option. He has no option. He, in the law department or the mayor, that is Indiana law, period. So again, you can go forward, I guess, on any of them. So I don't mind you going forward, Mr. Renz. I think he's a capable attorney. But again, I think you should, I don't know, either ask him about the statutes. I asked Attorney McCain about the statute. Certainly you shouldn't listen to me. I haven't been doing it that long, but at least you should ask one of those attorneys about these statutes. It'll save you, I think it's going to save you some individual liability too, as time goes on.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Attorney Williams.
Yes, just briefly, I did get the email and followed up with a phone call to Councilwoman Atkins. Indeed, it was communicated to me that the law department instructed Ms. Atkins for me to prepare the ordinance. I did so simply not to hold up the discussion today for the sake of having something for you all to discuss today. But as you see in the ordinance, I did not change the name of the preparer to that of my own because I was aware of 36-4-9-12. I have since spoke to Attorney Poe. I have expressed my concern, and he's assured me that he is aware of the statute, and we shouldn't have this problem again. But I will not be placing my name as the preparer of the document. I simply did what Councilwoman Atkins asked, so you all would have something to discuss tonight.
And let me be clear. I called Attorney Poe to ask what was the appropriate way to go about making sure that we had the correct amendments to review. So I just want to address, it's kind of condescending to say, well, you all and you also wasn't that. I did call Attorney Poe to get recommendation from him in terms of what will be the best way to proceed, especially since the administration has stated that they were not in support of it, and was told that it was now part of the council's responsibility and that I should reach out to Attorney Williams. So that's what happened earlier today. So Attorney Williams, I thank you for working on this on our behalf, and going forward, we know we'll move appropriately.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lay.
It's wrong. It's wrong. Now, if Councilwoman Ty Atkins don't know the difference, I'm telling you, take a look at Indiana.
No, that's not the point. I said, okay, I acknowledge that the statute was correct. And I said that moving forward, now I know the right measures to take. But I also stated that earlier today, I initially reached out to the city attorney and was told that I should reach out to Attorney Williams. So I've acknowledged that fault, and I understand that, and we'll move forward. There's no
Right.
need for us to spend an hour. We
Well, I'm not
understand that.
condescending. I'm trying to help you
What's
here.
condescending?
No, I'm trying to help you.
And I appreciate the help.
No, you don't appreciate it. That's condescending. I'm trying to help you. I'm simply telling you what's in the statute. Now, let me finish.
Gave me the statute.
Let me finish.
I received the statute.
I gave you the statute in January, long before Attorney Williams did it.
Okay, well,
Here's what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman.
And I'm a new council person.
Here's what I'm saying,
That's
Mr. Chairman.
condescending.
No,
Mr.
then
Chair.
I'm condescending. I accept
That is
that. I don't have no problem.
Mr. Chair.
When I sue you on something else, I would be condescending
You're
too.
not gonna sue me on anything.
Let me finish.
Clear.
Well, go ahead. I'm not worried about you, Councilman. Let me go ahead. Here's what I'm saying.
Wait. Let's get into, we already dealt with the whole preparedness. We got it.
No. I had another thing that I was saying.
No, I'm not acknowledging it, Mr. Lay. I'm going to go into the overview of where we're at now.
Let me finish what I was about to say.
I'm not acknowledging now, Mr. Lay. We're going to start.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. We're going to start the overview. I'm going to ask Councilwoman Ty Atkins if she will lead us through the overview at this time with the amendments where we're at thus far. It is now 9:04, and there's another meeting supposed to start after this. We got to keep moving.
So the council should have a copy of what was worked on today. It's basically the amendments that we discussed in the previous committee meetings. And so what I guess I can do is quickly go over what those adjustments were. Sorry, my computer is bringing it up a little bit slow. So one of the first, I just caught one. So in the definition, and this needs to be changed, under section 1 definitions, CBA applicable development, it was discussed. Currently, it's stated that anything in excess of $1 million will be defined as an applicable development. We talked about changing that. The recommendation at this time is to change it to $500,000. Also, under compliance officer, we talked about just including that the reports that the compliance officers does write should also be sent to the Gary Common Council as well as the Enforcement Committee as required. So the addition of the Gary Common Council was added into that section. This is still under section 1 definitions. Section 2, which was commissioned on the community benefits agreement. This is the section that actually talked about the construction of the CCBA. Listen clear. So the recommendation was for us to utilize a 9-member commission selected by the Gary Common Council. That commission selection should include at least 1 resident who reside within each district in the city. The change to the term was from 4 years to 2. There's, I guess, recommendation in terms of how to stagger the commissioners, was to stagger them by utilizing the Gary Common Council to designate 4 appointed commissioners to serve 1 inaugural year. And this was kind of similar to what the original CPO 2020-39 had in section 2-E. In step 4, it had appointees from the Gary Common Council as well as the mayor to serve an inaugural 2 years. So now we're saying that those appointees will come from the council. It will be 4 of those, and they will serve 1. And the balance will be appointed for an initial 2 years. And then those who, after that 1 year, will have to reapply if, applicable, and then we will then go through the boards and commission appointments as we do with every other commission and board. We recommended to keep the additional subsections of F, G, and H. Now under section 3, it just repeated, it just defined again that the total benefit should be $500,000 instead of $1 million. Under section 4, the change is to include the range, that on the low end, it could be 1% up to a percent of 15. So we just added the range between 1 up to 15 versus it's just saying up to 15%. I'm going to come back to that question. That's just a change one. This is in section 5, community engagement, subsection 4, part A. So this section states about the 2-member requirement. Oh, okay, so this talks about like the compliance officer facilitating meetings. Initially, it just said only between the CCBA as well as the developer. Again, to make sure that we have engagement and collaboration between all interested parties, we just changed the recommendation that a member of the council or the council should be also included. And so the statement states that the Gary Planning and Development Committee should also be included in those in the public meeting that have the two that's required, that the Gary Common Council Planning and Development Committee should be included. And again, these are only recommendations, it's up for discussion, but this is just taking all of the points that was reviewed over the last, I guess, 2 meetings, if you will. Now I'm in section 7. In section 7, section 1, subsection 1, excuse me. Okay, this part talks about non-compliance. So in the state that there is non-compliance, the enforcement committee should submit written notice to the Gary Common Council immediately. Prior to, there was no notice requirement to inform the Gary Common Council of any type of non-compliance issue. Section 7, subsection 2, this spoke to the corrective action plan. Once the compliance officer works with the developer to create the CAP, prior to, it just said that the compliance officer would then present that plan to the enforcement committee. And so then we added a request for that corrective action plan to also be presented to the Gary Common Council at the following public meeting for approval. Okay, and that same section, the last sub number was 6. Remove the exec. Okay, and so this one stated that the Common Council I'm sorry, the correct word was the Common Council and the executive of the city should have the authority to exempt any development from the terms of the CBA ordinance. So one thing that had came up was the Gary Common Council is the sole authority who approves the tax abatement. So possibly they should have the sole authority to exempt a developer from adhering to the CBA ordinance. So it just changed that language. It only states that the Gary Common Council, or the Common Council, if you will, shall have the authority to exempt any development from the terms of the CBA. I think that's it in terms of changes. There is a discussion point that was not updated from our last meeting, but that point was under section 4. I think subsection 2, yes, deposit and control of reinvestment funds. We just needed to confirm if, and I think it was kind of just some discussion, but my notes were unclear about this. We know that money goes to the general fund always, but did we have to explicitly state that a non-reverting account should be, created under the general fund for these funds, or not? So that was the discussion point that we wanted to review from last committee meeting. And that's all I have, Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add, because I have sought some advice from CPAs, is that the funds can be diverted directly to the non-reverting fund. I don't know if I had an opportunity to get back with Councilwoman Atkins. I told her I would contact some friends downstate to get an answer on that question, and I did get an answer that the funds are not required to go into the general fund first. They can be directed to go directly to the non-reverting fund.
Mr. Chair, can I have a question on that?
Yes.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney Williams, isn't it the case that already we send, or organizations receive funds? I know like the EDC, for example, receives funds based on past tax abatements, and these funds do not pass through the city, but they go directly to the EDC per the Lake County Auditor's Office and the whole statutory process that's already laid out in terms of how those funds are to be dealt with when there's been a tax abatement?
That's correct. You also have statutory requirements as to how you deal with the wheel tax and some other state mandate requirements. So yes, and that was my mindset, but I wanted to be sure.
Right.
But I did in fact get an answer that it can be directed directly to the non-reverting fund if your ordinance so dictates.
Because my concern was that during the last council meeting, it was stated that basically what's currently in the ordinance is quote unquote illegal. And, you know, that's a very strong word. And I know that if it's illegal, then we have a lot of tax abatements that go to the designated not-for-profit that do not flow first through the city. So I just think it'd be good to have it clarified in writing for what the statutory process is. I know we discussed this at one of our committee meetings about how the Lake County Auditor gets it. I think the Treasurer's Office may also be involved, but I know the Auditor's Office is involved in setting whatever that amount is, and then the dollars simply flow from the entity that received the tax abatement to the designated entity, if you will, in the relevant ordinance. So I think it'd be good to have that in writing, because anytime someone says something is illegal, you know, we should be very careful about that, especially in a public meeting. Thank you.
I think where the confusion lies is that the city is the only authorized fiscal agent for any entity within the city. So yes, the funds have to be received by the city. However, they are not required to be deposited into the general fund first. They can be deposited directly into the non-reverting fund. So there may be some semantics there. Absolutely, the funds must be received by the city. As Councilwoman Brown can tell you, she's done millions of times when you all receive donations and things of that nature. The city receives the money, but where they're directed to place the money is within the purview of this council and the ordinance that you passed. That was the question that I was unclear on, and I have since gotten an answer that I'm satisfied with, that they can be deposited directly into the non-reverting fund as specified in the ordinance.
And Mr. Chair, can you define non-reverting fund? I think I know what that means, but I want to make sure we're all clear when we say that, what we mean.
Who was that for? The attorney? Attorney Williams?
Yes.
Oh,
When we
absolutely.
say yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you said Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. Non-reverting funds means you specify where the money is to go. In this case, it would be the Gary Economic Development Commission. And those funds must go there and can be only used for those purposes. That's probably the most layman definition of non-reverting fund.
Gotcha. And what we need to do is, as a council, to acknowledge that those funds were in fact given to the designated entity vis-a-vis the ordinance, correct?
In the ordinance, you can instruct where you would like the funds to go.
Right, but I'm saying as those funds come year after year, right, you're saying that the council would need to formally acknowledge that the entity that designated received those funds.
I don't know if that's, No, I'm not. What
Okay.
I'm saying, the donations in which you often hear Councilwoman Brown speak to, you acknowledge the donations. I don't think there's any harm in doing it that way. I just don't think that's a necessary
Oh,
step.
good. Yeah, I'm
If-
glad it's not. I just was concerned because we were saying it's, such strong language was used during the last meeting. And so I just wanted to make sure the process was clear as it relates to what the statute requires and that there wasn't anything illegal about what the ordinance would say. If you recall, at the last council meeting, there was a lot of talk about it being illegal in terms of how these funds flowed.
Yes,
And
I recall, and that's what triggered my wanting to get a better understanding, because
Right.
it's not so much a legal question as it is a fiscal accounting question.
Right.
So I relied on, and they probably prefer not to be named, but an agency who represents numerous municipal governments in Lake County. And I'm confident with their opinion that the funds can be diverted directly to the non-reverting fund, as long as the ordinance spells that out directly.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions by council members at this time? Anyone from the public? All right. Well, we will hear this matter here September the 8th. No, I'm sorry, September 15th, 2020 at 6 p.m. via Zoom. There's nothing else. I thank everyone.
I have a quick question. And how is this, is a new ordinance with all that we've said going to, how we're going to procedurally do this at the next meeting?
At the next meeting, this will be an amendment. At that time, I'll make an amendment to the current amendment, and then this will be presented at this time.
Will it be an amendment by substitution, essentially?
Yes, that would be my motion.
And that amendment is already prepared in written form. We already have that, right?
It's written form, but what I will do is send it to Corporation Council for they can oversee it and make sure that they sign off on it properly.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
because there are a few changes. I made all of the changes I think that I was instructed to do, but from this conversation, I think you can gather that there may be a few other changes that may be needed. For example, I put $1 million, and it was discussed today that that would be reduced to 500,000. So there would simply be need to be a request from the sponsor to the Corporation Council to make the noted changes.
My question is, when you say the sponsor, who are you referring to?
It's my understanding, well, I'm sorry, my communication was with Councilwoman Atkins.
Okay.
And I understand that Councilman Brewer is a co-sponsor. So,
And me too.
well, yeah. And if anybody else want to jump on board, talk to the Corporation Council and have them add you as a co-sponsor, because in what I prepared, I think I only referenced Councilwoman Atkins and Councilman Brewer.
Okay, I'd like to be added as well.
I believe you are added on there.
Okay.
I seen you was added.
All right.
We'll make sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Paul.
I did. I wanted to take a real quick second just to follow up on something that was discussed at the beginning. I had a conversation with Attorney Williams and Councilman Lay pertaining to the request from Councilwoman Atkins about the council attorney drafting ordinances on behalf of the council. And she's absolutely correct. She had reached out, said, hey, I'm just following up on this, just procedurally, how does this go? Since it's not you, since, the kind of how it's in line with the question from Council Member Williams, I'm sorry, not Williams, Council Member Godwin had brought up, it's a little bit different of a procedure as far as how this is kind of played out. And I did state to Councilwoman Atkins that the attorney for the council could draft the ordinance, and I have had a conversation with Councilman Lay about that. And this is one of those occasions where after looking into it, I do think that there is a point of contention between our interpretation of it. I do think it is something that the council attorney can do. I think they can absolutely draft the ordinances. After looking into this, for example, the South Bend Council attorney, Kathleen Sikansky-Ferrand, served for 42 years, the longest serving council attorney in the state of Indiana. And she drafted countless resolutions and ordinances and the like for the council. So I don't think we necessarily have we see that it's a completely black and white issue. Obviously, we will never turn down. We were not going to turn down, requests from the council members to do this. So the question was simply asked whether or not it was possible for that to happen, and my answer was that it was possible for the council attorney to draft that, and that is something that we do think is possible. Reason being is I think the interpretation, if you look at 36-4-6-24, it states that the council attorney can do anything that does not conflict with the law department or with the obligations of the law department. The law department does have it is a shall. They shall draft ordinances for. It lists all the city departments, the commissions, and so forth. It doesn't necessarily list the legislative body, but obviously we do that, and there's no issue with that. But I do think that Councilwoman Atkins, she obviously, her attempt to just get this done was, I think it is, she was just really just trying to make sure that it was done in time and done timely and make sure that everybody was on the same page. So I do want to say, Councilwoman Atkins, I apologize if this caused a little bit of commotion at the beginning, but I do think we do have a different interpretation of how that is read. But again, we will always work with the council. We're here at your leisure, so.
Mr. Chair. Attorney Paul, but let me be clear. I wanted it to be done right, okay? Not just rushed for this meeting. Like I wanted it to be done right.
Absolutely.
So just to be clear.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams.
Yeah, it was not my intent to debate this, but I feel obligated to after what Attorney Poe just stated, which I wholeheartedly not only think, I know is incorrect. Yeah. And what's so frustrating about this to me is I have sat as the attorney for this council through 2 administrations, 3 now. And the Corporation Council, under which Attorney Poe served, took the very opposite position. The very opposite position. And I can't believe that he doesn't either recollect that or he's purposefully not remembering it. But I was scalded under the former Corporation Counsel, Nikhil Allen Winfrey, for preparing an ordinance without consulting the law department. And that is where I was first introduced to the statute that Attorney Lay has quoted. And again, everyone can read it for themselves. 36-4-9-12, specifically subsection 4. So there is no debate. It says that the corporation, the law department, this is the authority of the law department, 4 says, shall draft ordinances or other legal papers for the city and its departments, boards, commissions, and other agencies when requested by the proper officer. Clearly, the legislative body is an agency of the city. Simply look up the definition to agency. So there's no debate here. Now, Attorney Poe may disagree, but I would welcome him to get an opinion then. Let's get an opinion, because we previously discussed this, and I feel that it's disingenuous now to go back and forth with the council about this when I know for sure just 3 years ago, at most 4, the law department took the exact opposite position. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I could just real quickly,
Paul.
Attorney Williams is right. I do recall there being an instance where where the former corporation counsel, Nikhil Allen Winfrey, had wanted to be consulted about it, which is, I think that's really the distinction here, is we're not talking about just drafting and without consulting with the law department. I think this comes down to whether or not it's just the drafting portion of it. And I think that's where Councilwoman Atkins, her question really lied. I mean, really, that's kind of what the issue was here, was whether or not Attorney Williams could do that. And simply whether or not it could be drafted by Attorney Williams, that was the issue. And I don't want to belabor the point. I do know that there were other instances where the law department did not want to draft certain ordinances under the previous administration because it did not agree with what the council had, or certain council members that were trying to propose certain ordinances. That I know that the Corporation Council did not specifically want the law department to draft those, and wanted the council attorney to do so. But nevertheless, I mean, again, I completely agree with Attorney Williams. It's not worth a point belaboring at this point. I just wanted to make sure that Councilwoman Atkins, understood that, I guess, kind of where the law department's opinion was on this, and moving forward, obviously, just have we'll have a lot better method of communication and ensuring that these issues don't continue.
Mr. Chairman, I know I'm not supposed to be able to speak at this meeting.
You ain't.
Unless you change your mind. I will not speak to your ordinance. I will certainly vote on it. Listen, I don't, and again, you can be fast and loose with these statutes. If the word shall is in there, that takes away all discretion. If you go back and look at Indiana Code 36-4-6-24, it's quite clear in there the hiring of Mr. Williams, or Attorney Renzo Williams III, does not affect the relationship back to the law department. I remember I also not only served on this council, I represented this council for about 6 or 7 years. They didn't know how, the law department didn't know how to draft, or to get it straight, for the new fire chief to come on, the young lady. I drafted it, but refused to put my name on it. And so I gave it back to Attorney Nikhil Allen at that time. And of course, her name went on, and they made certain amendments to it. So again, these statutes are there because you feel like you should do something. Read Ordinance 842, which is your own rules. It says that you shall ask corporation counsel. It's your own rules. So I don't know how you go forward. Again, I was aware he was doing it. I don't have a problem with it tonight. Attorney Williams laid out what was supposed to be done. So I don't have a problem with that, because it doesn't matter who drafted it. My vote's going to be the same. But what I was just simply saying, in the future, and that's what I was trying to get over with, but I guess the mere fact that I speak seems to irritate people, which means if you're not one of 3 people on earth, it don't mean anything to me. And one of them, he's not clear when he disagrees with me. But that's what I was trying to say. You can be fast and loose with the ordinances. You can speed it up because you need time. But I just would suggest, all you have to have is an 8th grade education to read these statutes. You don't have to go to law school. They're very straightforward. They're very easy to read. And that's probably what the council, and if Attorney Poe tells you to do something illegal, ignore him. You should be able to read it for yourself. You certainly couldn't use that as defense in the court. My attorney told me, or my accountant filled out my tax return. None of that counts. I assure you of that. And I really appreciate, Mr. Chairman. I know it's hard for you to let me speak, but I appreciate that.
It's a struggle tonight.
I know it was. They once passed the rule I could only talk for 3 minutes. They did that because it's hard to follow me. I understand why you would want me to speak. It's very difficult.
Okay.
Thank you though.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Godwin.
I
see you.
did want to acknowledge, if you could, Carolyn McCready. She's written a comment in the comment section, and so if she's able to speak, and if you're okay with that, I think we might as well take care of that now.
Yes.
And I would like to say something afterwards to clarify something that is being proposed. I would like to clarify.
Go ahead with since you're already on the floor, go ahead, and I'll come back to.
Okay, I just want to clarify, Councilwoman talked about the nine people. So I want to be clear. Are you saying these 9 people will replace the CBA? These appointments by the council for the nine districts that belong to the council? That's a clarification that I need to know. That are you saying we're going to replace? The council's going to choose and replace those persons on the CBA. That's number 1. And then the number 2 is when this money that's supposed to go to the CBA, are you saying that this money is going to be given to the economic development group? So I want I will need some clarification on those things.
You want me to try to?
Yes, Councilwoman Atkins.
Okay, so the first question about section 2 and the 9. So it was discussed in previous meetings that we needed to consolidate the number of members that was on the commission. So 9 was the number that had the most consensus on. In terms of replacing, we had asked at the request of the council for those existing members that were in the organization to submit resumes. I believe that we only received resumes of 4 people, Carolyn McCready, Dr. Needleman, Lori Latham, as well as Dr. Vanessa Allen McLeod. I don't think anyone else had submitted a resume for review or consideration.
And Jeremy Yancey.
Jeremy Yancey. So one of the requests of the council was that with the new formed commission, that there was representation from each one of the districts. So I believe there's an abundance of people on the existing entity that is from one district, which is the 1st. And so we wanted to make sure that there was diversity and inclusion of all representation of the city. And so that was the request for that. There was a statement that I reviewed today that said that 4 of those appointees will serve as an inaugural 1 year to initiate a stagger. And so it was from consideration that those 4 will come from the existing entity and the balance will be appointed from boards and commissions. Does that address that question?
Well, I guess I missed something in all of the discussion because in a sense, this is not going to be a citizens, in a sense, this is going to be, this whole CBA proposal is going to be taken over by the appointments of the council. And that was my stipulation that, no, I don't want to be appointed by the council. Okay, I'm willing to serve and work with the CBA, but I am not willing to be approved and appointed by the council. Been there, done that. I'm not interested in being an elected to be appointed by an elected official. So that brings a different taste to all of this, and especially you're going to put them in there for 1 year. It's hard to do a lot in 1 year. Been on the school board. I was on the school board in Chicago, and it's hard to have transformation in 1 year.
Okay, so I will allow the committee as well as the council members to fill in the gaps. But that discussion has been a part of this committee as well as the public portion for a number of months. The implementation of Section 2, who was led by Councilman Lay, was to address that. The initial question was, how is this entity, who is this entity gonna, how are you going to have authority of funds, but you have no report up or association with a council or the administration? So that was a small part of the reason why Councilman Lay had worked so hard to even do a Section 2 to address the structure of the entity. I don't think any member of the council will allow I can't speak for everybody, but I wouldn't have been comfortable voting for it unless there was some structure related to how you interact with the council, especially related to funds being reverted to an account that you all will have a say-so or influence on. So this has been discussed since June, since the establishment of Section 2. I believe Councilman Lay might have started working on it in June, and it was first proposed to the council in the July meeting. So all of that has been in his initial, and then us just making the modification of 9 members, and then also in terms of the staggering was again a part of his initial amendment. And so we were just using the same structure.
I'm clear.
We were using the same structure of the staggering to have based on the smaller amount of members. So the initial recommendation was to have a 4-year term. We're decreasing that to a 2-year term.
I'm clear on what you're saying, but I am not clear that it was decided. It was decided that we were going to, as council, appoint in those 9 positions. It was discussed. I've been on every meeting. It was discussed, but
no, it was discussed as well as it was discussed in detail in the last committee meeting. Where I have the notes in that meeting.
I was
and
there.
That's what we said we were going to identify in the proposal.
I was there, but nowhere was it succinctly decided that we're going to appoint the 9 and that the city council is giving those initial people 1 year. So that might have been, I don't remember that being.
May I chime in? Nothing is decided in a committee.
Absolutely.
Everything is up for discussion. At the end of the day, no legislation is sponsored by council persons. So this is a piece of legislation that's been sponsored, and council persons would get to vote yay or nay or abstain on it. So nothing is decided in committee. This council is not bound by what anybody particularly wants to do. Now, we have heard a lot of different ideas, a lot of different considerations, but ultimately, it's up to the members of this council to propose legislation and to vote on it. So I think we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of discussion, but I think the consensus is exactly as, at least among this council, right, who'll be voting on the legislation, is what Councilwoman Atkins said. Now, as it relates to the funds, and she can fill in, I'm sure, the issue was the 30% was too high and unrealistic in terms of what we were asking. And so we tried to reach a middle ground. Now, I believe, please correct me, it was 15% it was an imposed fee that could go to a nonprofit. It was at one point going to go to Gary Redevelopment. It was the consensus that it would go to the EDC. That's what's in the amendment. Now, anybody could change that or could try to amend the amendment to the amendment, but that's what's in there now. And I think it's up to 15%.
No.
Yes.
So the imposed fee is not related. It's related to the abatement. So
that's already done.
Right. In the ERA, or when we do a declaratory ERA to confirm a tax abatement. Help me out. Help me out, Councilman Rule, if I'm not saying it right. So that's optional, right? So the CBA is the imposed fee minus, I believe, right? Minus the up to 15%, which is separate, which is the CBA portion of it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think in the CBA, it says it's flexible right now. The language says that it could either go to the non-reverting account, if that's the language. Right now it says the general fund, or the Gary Economic Corporation Council, Development Council, I forget the
corporation.
Yeah, the Gary Economic Development Corporation. So it's flexible where it allows the entity to decide on a project by project basis where, if in fact there is access that is associated with the CDA, where that funding will be allocated. Does that make sense?
And this is my last thing. It would be a shame if this money goes to the Economic Development Department and not to the CBA. It would be shameful. This is and I have nothing against them, but this is an entity that does not even have to report to the people. I'm here because I'm about the people. So it would be shameful for it to go to an entity that does not have to respond to the whims and the engagement of the community. But I appreciate everybody working hard on this. Okay, thank you, Councilman, all of you. That's my thing. I represent the community. That's why it is so important to me that the community, that we win on this, that this is one time that the community wins in terms of being involved with a process.
Okay, I have to
Thank
go
you
to
so
someone else. Is there Ms. McCready at this time?
Can she hear? Okay, hear.
Yeah, because you've been unmuted. So,
Yes, that's here.
Carolyn,
Maybe
You
while
may-
she's trying to get on, just to let the public know, that is correct. These are only recommendations from a compilation of, the meetings that we've had that we've put into a proposal to review.
And you're right.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yes,
Chairman?
go right to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I had unmuted and then so much time went by, so then I got muted again. But you can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I took some notes from what Councilwoman Atkins explained tonight, and these are my thoughts on it, and not just my thoughts, but our committee's thoughts. And I want to also remind the council that I sent each of you a memo on the issue of the threshold, the issue of the definition of the impact area, the amount of the investment that the community would receive back based on a tax abatement, and then the duties of the compliance officer. So what I'd like to say is that $500,000 is still too high. We don't know what the average tax abatement is. What if the average tax abatement is $400,000? We don't know. We don't have any history of what it is. So how can we make it so high? I mean, I'm glad it came down, by half, but it's still pretty high. Why don't we start out with a more realistic figure, like $250,000? And that way, if it turns out that there are too many projects that are applicable, then the council might want to amend that number. But right now, because this ordinance exempts home funds, and in the case of Broadway Lost, that's $1 million, that takes away from the possibility that even this project would not have been applicable. In this case, of course, it would, because it's $500,000. But like I said, we don't know what the history of tax abates is, and if it's a lot less, then nothing will ever be applicable. Okay. The idea that we go from 1 to 15%, I'm not sure what 1% would do in any case for community improvement. I just, would that be $50? Would that be, $150? I mean, we don't, that is a very, very low number. I think that it would be more reasonable to think in terms of 5 or 10%. I mean, 5 to 15% makes more sense, because again, we're talking about getting something back, a return on our investment for the people from tax breaks. Okay. The compliance officer, I don't know if Councilwoman Atkins spoke to the whole new language in the amendment, but it didn't say anything in there about how often the compliance officer would make a report. In the first amended ordinance, it was yearly. That is really, really crazy because a lot of things can happen in a year. It has to be on a more regular basis, at least monthly, and report to the council the findings. How is anyone going to know if a corrective measure is even necessary if a report is only issued once a year? That makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely none. And I'm really hoping that gets corrected. We also talked about the impact area. We thought that perhaps it could be defined as a neighborhood/district as opposed to the 400 feet that's in the ordinance right now. We thought it would be more concrete and identify in terms of the population excuse me, that lives close to the area. But please, 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 Rodney, if you're listening, or anyone on the council, please make sure that our committee, or at least that I receive this amendment. We came into the meeting tonight not knowing what was in it. And it's pretty hard to respond when we don't even know what we're talking about, because we don't know what ended up, after the law department worked on it, what actually ended up in it. So please send it to us as soon as possible. We think the reverting fund is fine. We don't like the idea of the EDC, but the reverting fund is good because the money can go there and then the developer can take it out and use it for the project that the community decides they want to happen. So those are our thoughts. Everyone has done amazing work on this. We are a work in progress. We know that. We're making history, and history sometimes is making good trouble. So with that, I'll end.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right. If there's nothing else, we have heard the concerns, and we definitely will. Let me just say, with us, with me being the chair of this and now a sponsor of this, the goal is trying to get this over the threshold, and I at least need 5 votes. So there's some concessions that I have to make to get votes, and there's some things that may not have been originally that we wanted to do that I have to do to get the support from my colleagues. So I will continue to reach out to my colleagues and see what we can work on, and what we can't work on. We'll just try and move this ordinance forward. That's the ultimate goal, to move it forward. But I think we have come a long ways. But I know it's not everything that we all want. It may not be everything that I want or other colleagues, but I think we're making great progress in getting to a certain place there. Is there anything else from council members at this time? Seeing none. Thank you all. I'll see you all on the 15th via Zoom. Look forward to taking this up for third and final at that time. Everybody have a good night.